ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar, my dear friends. This is 18th video on Vivek Chodamani of Adi Shankracharya. Topic is Give Up Vasanas, the method. This video starts with verse number 267. Give up Vasanas, the method. Gyatyo Vastunyapi Balvati Vasanan नादिरेशा कर्ता भोक्ता आपे है मिति दृढ़ा यासे संसार हेतु हो प्रत्यग्र दृष्टि आत्मनि निवसता सापनेया प्रयत्ना मुक्तिन प्राहुस दिहि मुनियो वासना तानवम यत. Even after the realization of truth, there remains a powerful, beginningless, deep impression that one is the doer and the enjoyer, which is the cause for rebirth. By living in a subjective state of steady identification with the self, it has to be conscientiously removed. That which is the annihilation of the vasanas here and now is called liberation by the sages. Sankara is trying to define what liberation mukti is. The sudden change of meter in the poetry is to arrest the attention of the student. The teacher enters the realms of ecstasy and dances to the heavenly rhythm set in his own depths. Even if as student through the study or on the Shastras one has known that there is a reality, one will not be able to live the dictates of the scriptures because of the pressure of the vasanas. Lust, anger, likes, dislikes, etc. will not easily leave one just because one has book knowledge of the reality. By studying the Shastras and learning to argue, you may have a very good opinion of yourself, but the people around you will understand you exactly as you are. The vasanas are very powerful. Even though you have studied the Shastras, you will not be able to express the perfection that you know yourself to be. It will always be sullied by the stink of your vasanas. As a result, the identification with the mind and the intellect will continue, and the attitudes of doership, kartitvam and enjoyership, bhoktritvam, will maintain themselves in your bosom. Identification with the mind will give rise to a sense of enjoyership, and with the intellect to a sense of doership. These two put together constitute the jiva, the PFT, the individuality. This vanity of agency and enjoyership is the essence of the ego. The ego is thus the final manifestation of the subtle and powerful vasanas in each personality. The feeling that I am the non-self, I am the PFT, I am the ego is the cause for all sansar and its transmigrations. Birth and death are for the ego. It is the ego which goes from one body to another. Thus, even though one has studied the Shastras, there will be transmigration because of the play of powerful vasanas. The subjective state, Pratyak Drashtaya, Pratyak means subjective inner. At this moment, our entire attention is dissipated by the endless varieties of objects, emotions, and thoughts. We are extroverts, so introvertedness is the state of complete withdrawal from the BMI and the OET and turning the mind towards that great reality. In order to turn inwards towards the Atma, we must make an effort and learn to give up the I do mentally. Nobody can help us do it. Each one must struggle for himself. Getting rid of the idea I do and I enjoy takes us to liberation. This liberation is not afterwards somewhere at some distant time. It is right here and now, in this very world, in this very body. This liberation is gained by the contemplative seer Muni. He who gets away from the bonds of the Vasanas is the liberated one. So, liberation means release from the Vasanas, which create desires, passions, lusts, greeds, which in their turn drive the individual out of his real nature into the world of objects seeking gratifications. Stanza number 268. Ahem mameti yo bhavo deha akshada vana atamni adhyasoyam nirastavyo vidosa sau atam nisthaya. I and mine, this notion in the body, sense organs, etc., which are the not self, this supreme position, the wise man must end by identification with his own self. Various obstacles may come in one's attempt to release oneself from one's vasanas. How to remove these one by one is explained here. The sense of I and my is the main obstacle. The ego within the physical structure is called I. The extension of I projected into the world of objects is called my. This my is nothing but objectified I projected and reflected in the objects in my. At present, there is the feeling of I-ness in matters, gross and subtle body, the sense organs, the mind, and the intellect. The totality of all this is me. Therefore, I spread out me into things around and claim them to be mine. The superimposition I am this must be rejected. Mirastavyaha. A wise man can raise himself above these misconceptions by constantly holding on to the idea I am the consciousness because of which the body, the sense organs, the mind, and the intellect are functioning. I am the mere witness of their functions. By this self assertion, I am Brahma. The wise man should get out of the supreme position, adhyasa, that he is the body, the mind, and the intellect. Stanza number 269. ज्ञात्वा स्वं प्रत्यगात्मनं बुद्धि तद्वर्ति साक्षिणं सोऽहमित्येव सद्व्यर्था अनाआतं न्याय आत्ममितिं जहि. Realizing your innermost self as the witness of the intellect and its disturbances and ever maintaining the thought that I am said your identification with the not self. Janam here means book knowledge, a mere intellectual appreciation of the text. Having gained this ineffectual book knowledge, janatva, the self within is to be known as the witness of the intellect and its thoughts. Having known and understood its nature, one should move towards it. To step towards the self is to assert I am that, Hamsa. He alone am I, so hum. Start living as a mere witness of all the pulsations of the body, mind, and intellect. By this practice, the idea I am the self becomes rooted in our understanding. At present, we have this understanding rooted only in the BMI. This should be renounced, and the feeling I am the self should be cultivated. Earlier, we were told how to remove the obstacle of the ego sense made up of I and my by the constant pursuit of the idea of the self, Sava Atam Nishtha. The egocentric idea of the PFT in the assemblies of the equipments has to be renounced by realizing the consciousness, which is the witness of the intellect and its modifications. The subject that knows the thought procession in the bosom is the consciousness. Having known the consciousness, one has to move towards it. This moving towards it is possible only when one has identified oneself with it. In order to identify with reality, one must disassociate oneself from one's involvements with the body, mind, and intellect. I am not this assemblage of equipments. I am that, the consciousness, the witness of the equipments and their functions. This idea, Brahma Akravirti, should be kept alive during the entire period of our waking state. This too is a thought. The understanding arising out of this thought is also a limited knowledge, virti jnanam. But with this right thought, sadvirti in the intellect, the wrong thought, asadvirti is removed. When thus you practice on, before long the feeling I am the body, mind and intellect is destroyed. Here again you are replacing one thought with another thought. But even this limited knowledge, Virti Jnanam, removes the false assumption that the not self is the self and Atmani Atma Mati. Stanza 270. Loka anuvartanam tyaktva dehanuvartanam shastra anuvartanam tyaktva swadhyaya sapannayam kuru. Leaving your involvement with social formalities, leaving all ideas of beautifying the body, leaving aside unnecessary study of the Shastras, banish the superimposition which has crept up on the self. Always following blindly, following anuvartanam. At this moment, we all, as members of society, are fully engaged in the standard way of doing things, the standard methods everywhere adopted by others according to the fashion of the times. This is termed here as loka anuvartanam. Since we live as we are living, we are what we are. If you want to lift your life into a greater ambit, you have to change your ways of living. A girl after marriage suddenly becomes more responsible and her old way of life undergoes a change. A boy becomes a middle-aged man and then an old man, and at each stage the old ways of life change, yielding place to new. So too, if you want to gain a hold on the spiritual path, change without clinging, without changing the old values of life and ways of life, a new dimension of life and living cannot be achieved. You have to give up imitating the false values of others around you, meaning stop living blindly a stampede blueprint of life supplied by the fashions of the times or by the sensuous men who seek their fulfillment in sense indulgences. Just living the routine life of unintelligent imitation of others in society is the surest way to a life of sensuality. For spiritual purposes, a most intelligently replanned way of life is to be followed. If you want to take up sincere sadhana, you will have to redirect your life's flow. As the first thing to be renounced is the blind following of the patterns of the time, loka anuvartanam, deha anuvartanam, to live obeying implicitly the impulses of the flesh. Till now, we have been slaves to the physical body, feeding it, looking after it, flattening it, taking it to hospital when ill, when healthy, squandering its vitality in sensual living. Thus we live always at its service. This should also be given up. Renounce living in the flesh as the flesh. The next thing to be left is the blind following of the scriptures without understanding their deeper implications. Shastra Anuvartanam. Some commentators, however, interpret this term as leaving the study of all books other than text on spiritual ideals and religious ways of living. Leaving these three, what should one do? In your own self, Sava, the misconception that I am the body, the mind, and the intellect, Adhyasa, and or do away with Apanyanam, do accomplish Kuru, in short, and the misconceptions created by the superimpositions upon your divine self. We cannot do away with the shortcomings in our personality without the world, the body, and the scriptures. This verse, read as a whole, means make use of the world, be of a healthy body, make intelligent use of the Shastras instead of following them blindly. How modern, how progressively fresh is this denuded ideal? We are tempted to follow the world, we are egged up on to live a life of the flesh, we are whipped to pursue the study of secular things only because of the three kinds of vasanas in us. They are also called the triple appetites, asans. These breed the respective blind following of the body, the text, and the world. In order to get over these, their respective vasanas are to be eliminated. The existence of these vasanas is symptomatically proved by the manifestation of the aping tendency in their respective fields. Anuvartanam. When these three vasanas are removed, many other vasanas get automatically eliminated in the process, as all the rest of the vasanas are associated with these. Thus, symptomatic treatment by which the disease germs are ultimately removed is indicated in this verse. Stanza number 271. लोक वासनया जंतो शास्त्र वासनया पीचय देह वासनया ज्ञानम यथा वन्नैव जायते. People cannot attain realization because of their desire to run after the world, their thirst for unnecessary study of the Shastras, and their anxiety to pamper the body. That which has taken birth, Jantu, a living creature, In our day-to-day experiences of life, many a time we do not view things in their right perspective. This is normally due to some preconceived notions we entertain regarding things and beings around us. It is the predicament of man that his vision of the world around him is dictated by his personal bias of the moment. The equipment of understanding the intellect always tries to apprehend the things of the world in sympathy with its own existing vasanas, the ultimate propensities. If I dislike you intensely, then even if I see you performing a good deed, I label all your actions as vile and vicious. When you are my enemy, the enemy idea will be in my mind whenever I see you doing anything. Even if your work is most selfless and highly dedicated, I will interpret it only in the light of my vasanas. Thus, when your mind is not prepared and you study the Shastras, you will invariably miss their moot point. The Shastras statements will get distorted to yield you in understanding which will readily cater to all your existing urges. These urges will not allow you to understand things as they should be understood. A polluted mind renders us incapable of knowing things as they really are. The total urges in our bosom can be broadly classified under three categories. They are the social urges, loka vasana, the bodily or physical urges, deha vasana, and the urge to know, shastra vasana. These are the three tragic shackles upon the human personality. How these shackles bind us is explained in the following verse. Stanza number 272. Saṁskāra graha moksha रयो मयं पादनिबन्ध सरङ्खलं वदन्ति तज्जा पटुवासना त्रियं यो अस्मादि mukti samupati muktim. The wise have spoken of the three kinds of vasanas as iron chains shackling the feet for him who wishes to be liberated from the prison house of this world. He who is free from them attains liberation. These three types of desires, lokavasana, dehavasana, and sastravasana, perpetrate the utmost cruelty towards a human being. They bind him down to sansar as the strong iron chains binding a prisoner to the prison house. So say the wise men who have spoken, who have broken the chains and come out of the sansar prison. In order to be free, you will first have to break these shackles. Only then can the prisoner come out of the confining walls of the prison. Our identification with the body, mind, and intellect constitutes the prison walls and the iron bars that we have built around ourselves. In this subjective jail, we are tied down by the shackles of the triple hungers. Only he can be the liberated one who has come out of this ever-changing world of limitations. Stanza number 273. जलादि संसर्ग वशा प्रभूत दुर्गंध धूता गुरु दिव्य वासना संघर्ष नीव विभाति सम्य विधुमाने सती बाह्य गंधे. The captivating fragrance of the agru agolocham, which gets enveloped by an insufferable stink created by its contact with water, again manifests itself as soon as the enveloping smell is entirely removed by scrubbing. Stanza number 274. अंतः श्री तान तंदुर अंतवासना धूलि विलिप्ता Parmatam Vasana Parjati Sangharshanato Vishuddha Partiyate Chandan Gandhvat Safuta. The fragrance of the Supreme Self, like the fragrance of sandalwood, is covered by the dust of unending vasanas deeply ingrained in the mind and is again clearly perceived when it is purified by a continuous scouring with knowledge. Because of the vasanas, the human personality purifies and gathers the striking smell of lust, greed, anger, delusion, etc. The smell of flesh and its sensuality are the very characteristics of our personality at present. It does not have the beautiful fragrance of our essential nature. Instead of being useful to other members of society, we are ready to disturb them at all times. Indicating this, Sankara gives an example. Scandal, Sandalwood, when put in water and allowed to remain in it for a long time, emanates an obnoxious odor from the rotting wood. Ordinarily, it has the most heavenly fragrance, Divyavasana, but when it remains in contact with water for a long time, it starts stinking. If the wood is taken out and rubbed against a stone, the fragrance slowly emerges to waft pleasant satisfaction to all. Similarly, even though you are the Atma because of your identification with the body, the stink of your vasanas is coming out at the moment. Lust, anger, greed, etc. contribute their stink at all times. Love, mercy, and kindness have no accommodation in the heart. To gain its original status, the personality needs a little rubbing. It should be rubbed against the greater knowledge in meditation. The filth and the stint will go away, and one's real nature will then be revealed. By rubbing, we are not giving the smell to the sandalwood, its fragrance is already in it. It was not available, that is all. Similarly, divinity is not to be given to you from somewhere else. The Upanishad thunders that thou art. The inner essentially divine fragrance is covered by the dust of the dirty vasanas at present. The dirty vasanas are the social and physical and vasanas for acquiring knowledge. Because of these ultimate propensities, the divinity in us is not able to express itself, hence emanates the stink of our personality. Under such circumstances, the personality needs some rubbing, a little scraping with the right knowledge. By meditation, when the right knowledge is poured into the mind, it leaves its filthy, unworthy vasanas. Then the real nature of the self manifests itself just as the sandalwood on scraping wefts is refreshing fragrance. Stanza 275. Anatam vasana jalaitro bhuta atam vasana nitya atam nisthaya tesham nasi bhati swam sphuta. Innumerable desires for things that are the non-self cloud the desire for self-realization. When these have been destroyed by being constantly established in the self, the Atma manifests all by itself. The real fragrance of the self is veiled by the cobwebs of our preoccupations with the hungers to enjoy the not self Atam Vasana. It is like the dusty cobweb at the window which obscures the beauty beyond the window. The worldly vasanas, meaning the irresistible urges of the lower, the BMI, PFT, and OET, cloud the higher urges in us. By constant meditation upon the self, Nitya Atmanishthaya. Alone can one remove these cobwebs. Study of the scriptures, practice of meditation, sincere devotion to the Lord, and selfless, dedicated activity in the world. These will bring religious and spirituality into every minute of our lives. When the vasanas are removed, the self manifests of its own accord. The Atma is clearly perceived by its own brilliance. Stanza number 276. Yatha yatha pratyagvasthitam mane sattaya तथा मुंचति बाह्य वासना निशेषे मोक्षे सति वासनाना मात्मा अनुभूति प्रतिबंध शून्य. To the extent the mind becomes steadily established in the subjective self, to that extent it leaves its desires for the objects of the world. When all such desires completely end, then there is the clear, unimpeded realization of the self. To the extent the mind becomes introvert, to that extent extravertedness ends. As the mind gets established in the self within, the extravert vasanas, bahya vasana for the objects of the world get reduced. Thus, when the mind becomes totally introvert, completely established in the self, that is the state when there are no vasanas at all for objects of pleasure. All the vasanas are removed. That is the moment of a continuous experience of the Atma within and without, with no obstacle whatsoever. Lesser the vasanas, lesser are the agitations of the mind. Lesser the agitations of the mind, more contemplative is the intellect. No vasanas, no mental turmoil, complete contemplation, then the experience of the divine is effortless, natural. Stanza number and superimposition, the means. Stanza number 277. सव आत्म नेव सदा स्थित्वा मनो निश्यति योगिनः वासनानाम अक्ष पश्चात स्वाध्याय सापन्यम कुरु. Being ever fixed on his own self, the meditator's mind ends. Then there is a complete cessation of vasanas. So negate entirely your superimposition. In this section, with these 16 verses, Shankara exclusively indicates how our timeless projections can be ultimately removed and the pure infinite self in all its holiness rediscovered as the essential nature in each one of us. Without identifying with our body, mind, and intellect, let us steadily contemplate upon the self as our own divine, infinite nature. A yogi who has yogged his mind to this higher ideal gains mastery over his mind. He alone can annihilate his mind. The annihilation of the mind, mano nasha, is not possible unless all the vasanas in it have been exhausted. Without annihilating the cause, the effect cannot end. When the mind becomes quiet, then as a result of our sincere and repeated attempts at meditation, all the existing vasanas get roasted in the fire of contemplation. Though they give the impression of being there, they can never more sprout into desires, thoughts, and actions. Ending your misconceptions that you are the body, the mind, and the intellect, practice on diligently, and your superimpositions and experience the essential self which is behind all your personality layers. I end this video at this stage. Thank you for watching this video. Namaskar, my dear friend. Thank you.